The emergency beacon cut through the silence of space like a knife. Captain ZYX Thera of the Galactic Survey ship Quantum Dawn received the distress signal while conducting routine mineral scans near the outer rim of the Kepler 442 system. The signal was weak, fragmented, but unmistakably from a crashed vessel on the third planet's surface. "Sir, we're picking up life signs," reported Navigator Keslan, his forearms dancing across the control interface with practiced precision. "Multiple species. The readings are unusual." ZYX Thera's scaled brow furrowed as she studied the data streaming across her console. The planet below was classified as marginally habitable breathable atmosphere for most oxygen-breathing species, but the ecosystem was harsh and unforgiving. Food sources were scarce, and the native predators were notoriously aggressive. "How unusual?" she asked, her tail swishing with concern. "Sir, there appears to be a human among the survivors." The bridge fell silent. Every member of the crew knew about humans, the bipedal species from Sol 3 that had recently joined the galactic community. They were known for their stubborn nature and strange behavior, but, most importantly, they were considered one of the physically weakest species in known space. Their homeworld was classified as a death world by galactic standards, which most species found hard to believe given how fragile humans appeared. "A human?" ZYX Thera's voice carried surprise. "What would a human be doing this far from their territory?" "Unknown, sir. The crashed vessel appears to be a mixed-species transport. There are also Voltan, Kree SHT, and what appears to be an Extheria aboard." ZYX Thera nodded grimly. The Voltan were massive, powerful beings with thick hides and natural weapons. The Kree SHT were agile hunters with enhanced senses and razor-sharp claws. The Nextheri were known for their intelligence and problem-solving abilities, with minds that could process information faster than most biological computers. "How long have they been down there?" she asked. "Based on the crash trajectory and debris field analysis, approximately 4 standard days." 4 days. On a hostile world with limited food sources and dangerous predators. ZYX Thera felt a pang of sympathy, particularly for the human. The poor creature was probably already dead, or close to it. Humans were notorious for their high metabolism and need for frequent feeding. They also required prepared food, lacking the ability to digest raw materials that most species could consume in emergencies. "Prepare a rescue shuttle," she ordered. "Full medical team and emergency supplies. We'll need body bags as well." "Yes, sir." "Should we prioritize the stronger species for rescue?" ZYX Thera paused. It was a harsh but practical question. Resources were limited, and if the shuttle was attacked by the planet's predators, they might not be able to extract everyone. The logical choice would be to save those most likely to have survived and be useful. "Scan for active life signs first. We'll determine priorities based on who's still alive." The shuttle bay buzzed with activity as the rescue team prepared for deployment. Medical Officer Threndell, a tall, willowy being with 6 arms and advanced healing abilities, supervised the loading of emergency rations and medical supplies. "What do we know about human physiology?" ZYX Thera asked as they prepared to depart. "They're delicate," Threndell replied carefully. "High energy requirements, limited digestive capabilities, poor natural defenses. They require cooked food and have difficulty processing many substances that other species can handle." "On a world like this?" The medical officer shook his head sadly. The shuttle descended through the planet's turbulent atmosphere, passing through layers of thick, orange clouds before breaking into the clear air below. The landscape was harsh and unforgiving, jagged rock formations jutted from barren ground, and the vegetation was sparse and thorny. In the distance, they could see the smoking wreckage of the transport ship, its hull split open like a broken egg. "Life signs are stronger now," reported the shuttle pilot, a young Altarian named Velenaeus. "Definitely 4 survivors. They appear to be moving around?" "Moving around?" ZYX Thera leaned forward. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. In fact, they seem to be quite active. The readings suggest they're near the crash site but not inside the wreckage." As they approached the landing zone, ZYX could see the survivors through the shuttle's viewing port. Her 4 eyes widened in surprise. All 4 beings were not only alive but appeared to be in remarkably good condition. The massive Voltan, easily 3 meters tall with thick, gray hide, stood near what appeared to be a makeshift shelter. The Kree SHT was moving with fluid grace around the perimeter, clearly on watch duty. The next Theory was examining something near a small fire. And the human. The human was cooking. Is that human actually preparing food? Threndal asked, pressing his face against the viewing port. ZYX stared in amazement. The small, bipedal figure was indeed working over a fire, turning what appeared to be meat on an improvised spit. Around the human were organized piles of various materials, plant matter, prepared portions of meat, and what looked like processed vegetables. Land carefully, she instructed the pilot. And keep weapons ready. I want to know how they managed to survive this long, and where they're getting their food. The shuttle touched down about 50 meters from the crash site, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. As the rescue team disembarked, they were greeted by the 4 survivors walking toward them in what appeared to be excellent health and spirits. The Voltan, who introduced himself as Thakmar, was a veteran trader whose ship had been carrying luxury goods between systems. His massive frame should have required enormous amounts of food to sustain, yet he appeared well-fed and energetic. The Kree SHT, Siska, was a scout who had been traveling to a new assignment. Her species' high metabolism typically demanded constant hunting and feeding, but she showed no signs of the aggressive hunger that usually overtook her kind when food was scarce. The next Theory, called Prime Calculator Vex NN, was returning from an academic conference. His species' complex brains required specific nutrients that were rarely found on primitive worlds, yet he seemed alert and fully functional. And then, there was the human. I'm Jake Morrison, the human said, extending his hand in the peculiar human greeting gesture. Freelance xenobiologist. Thanks for the pickup. ZYX studied the human carefully. Jake appeared to be in his early 30s by human standards, with dark hair and friendly brown eyes. He was dressed in simple, practical clothing that had been modified and repaired in several places. Most importantly, he looked healthy, well-fed, and completely at ease. How was all ZYX could manage? Jake grinned, a facial expression that many species found disturbing but which ZYX had learned indicated humor or satisfaction among humans. How what? He asked. How are you alive? How are any of you alive? This planet has limited food sources, dangerous predators, and harsh environmental conditions. Our xenobiological surveys indicated that survival beyond 48 hours would be extremely difficult for most species. Oh, that, Jake said casually. Yeah, it was a bit challenging at first. But once I got my bearings and figured out the local ecosystem, everything worked out pretty well. Threndal stepped forward, his medical scanner beeping rapidly as he examined the human. Your readings are normal. Better than normal, actually. Your nutrition levels are excellent, your hydration is optimal, and you show no signs of stress or deprivation. Well, I've been eating pretty well, Jake replied with a shrug. Eating what? ZYX demanded. Our surveys show that edible plant life is scarce, and the native fauna is extremely dangerous. How could you possibly have found enough food to sustain 4 beings for 4 days? Jake exchanged glances with his 3 companions, and ZYX noticed something interesting. The other survivors, all of them larger, stronger, and theoretically better adapted for survival than the human, looked at Jake with expressions of deep respect and gratitude. Well, Jake said, scratching his head in a gesture that suggested mild embarrassment, I guess I should explain. But, first, are you guys hungry? I've got dinner ready, and I was just about to start on dessert. ZYX felt her jaw drop. Around her, the rescue team stared in disbelief. The human, the supposedly weak, fragile, helpless human, was offering to feed them. You made dinner? She asked weakly. Sure did. Roasted snarlfang haunch with native tubers and greens, seasoned with local herbs. The snarlfang is a bit tough, but if you cook it slow and low, it comes out pretty tender. Plus, I managed to find some fruit that tastes remarkably like pears when you cook them down with a little bit of tree sap.
Snarlfang?
Threndal's voice was barely a whisper.
You hunted and killed a Snarlfang?
2 of them, actually, Jake said matter-of-factly. The first one attacked us about an hour after the crash. Big nasty thing, all teeth and claws. After I took it down, I figured there would probably be more, so I tracked the scent trail back to their den and dealt with the other one before it could become a problem. The rescue team stood in stunned silence. Snarlfangs were apex predators, standing 4 meters tall with natural armor plating and claws that could cut through most metals.
A single Snarlfang could take down an armed squad of soldiers.
This human was casually discussing hunting 2 of them as if he'd gone to a market to buy groceries.
How? ZYXthera asked again, her voice faint.
Jake gestured toward the crash site, where she could now see several ingenious traps and defensive positions constructed from salvaged materials and natural resources.
Well, they're ambush predators, so once you understand their hunting patterns, they're not too hard to outsmart.
I used some wreckage to create a bottleneck, then rigged up a deadfall trap with some rocks and metal beams. The first one was caught completely off guard.
The second one was a bit more cautious, but I'd prepared a backup plan.
He pointed to what appeared to be a crossbow constructed from salvaged materials and local wood.
Improvised projectile weapon.
Took me about 6 hours to build and test. The Snarlfang hide is tough, but if you know the anatomy and can place your shots precisely. He shrugged again.
Plus, I had help from my friends here.
Thakmar is incredibly strong, Siska has amazing reflexes, and VexNN figured out the optimal trajectory calculations.
Thakmar, the massive Vultan, nodded enthusiastically.
Jake saved our lives. When the first Snarlfang attacked, we thought we were all dead. But, Jake fought it with nothing but a piece of metal from the wreckage and his bare hands.
He moved like
a predator, Siska finished, her voice filled with admiration.
I have never seen anything like it. The way he analyzed the creature's attack patterns, adapted his strategy, and struck at exactly the right moment, it was poetry.
VexNN, the next Theri, stepped forward. Jake's tactical thinking and resource management capabilities exceed any theoretical models in our databases. He transformed a survival situation into what humans might call a camping trip. He not only kept us alive but kept us comfortable and well-fed.
ZYXthera looked around the camp with new eyes.
What she had initially mistaken for simple survival measures was actually an impressive display of engineering and resource management. Jake had constructed not just shelter but a complete living space, with organized food storage, water purification, defensive positions, and even what appeared to be a primitive but functional workshop where he'd been crafting tools and improvements. The food supplies, she asked. Well, after dealing with the Snarlfangs, I spent some time studying the local ecosystem, Jake explained, walking toward the cooking fire. Turns out this planet has quite a lot of edible resources if you know what to look for and how to prepare them safely. These tubers, for instance, they're toxic when raw, but if you leach them in water for 12 hours and then roast them, they're actually quite nutritious and taste like a cross between potatoes and sweet corn. He gestured to various plants hanging to dry near the shelter. Those leaves make an excellent seasoning and also have natural preservative properties. That bark can be ground up and used like flour. And those berries, while poisonous to most species, are perfectly safe for humans and taste amazing when cooked down into a syrup.
But how did you know which plants were safe? Threndal asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his shock.
Trial and error, mostly, Jake said with a grin that made the medical officer wince. Plus observation of local wildlife behavior, basic botanical analysis, and some educated guessing based on similar ecosystems I've studied. Humans have been figuring out what's safe to eat for hundreds of thousands of years. You develop pretty good instincts for it.
ZYXthera felt a chill run down her spine.
The human had essentially been experimenting on himself with potentially lethal alien plants and somehow survived.
That's incredibly dangerous, she said.
Sure, Jake agreed cheerfully.
But so is starving to death. You've got to weigh your risks. Besides, I started with very small amounts and worked my way up. And I made sure to test everything on myself before offering it to the others. The casual way he mentioned risking his own life to test potentially poisonous food for his companions was perhaps the most disturbing thing ZYX had heard yet. You experimented on yourself? She asked. Of course. Couldn't risk the others. Thakmar's metabolism is completely different from mine, Siska's digestive system is much more sensitive, and Vexenen's brain chemistry is way too complex to mess with unknown compounds. Human physiology is actually pretty robust when it comes to processing novel toxins. We evolved as generalist omnivores, so we can handle a lot of weird stuff. Jake seemed completely unaware of how extraordinary this statement was. To the rescue team, he had just casually described himself as being so biologically adaptable that he could safely consume alien substances that might kill other species. Anyway, Jake continued, stirring something in a metal container over the fire. Once I figured out the safe-to-eat catalog, it was just a matter of developing efficient harvesting and preparation techniques. The key is understanding nutrition balance and making sure everyone gets what they need. He ladled a steaming mixture into improvised bowls made from shaped metal and handed them out to his companions, who accepted them with obvious pleasure and familiarity. Jake's cooking is amazing, Siska said, taking a grateful bite. He managed to combine ingredients that satisfy all of our different nutritional requirements while actually making everything taste good. The flavors he creates are unlike anything in our databases, Vexenen added. He somehow managed to synthesize taste profiles that appeal to 4 completely different species simultaneously. ZYX accepted a bowl from the human and took a tentative taste. The flavor was indeed extraordinary, complex, satisfying, and somehow perfectly suited to her own taste preferences despite being made from completely alien ingredients by a being whose species she barely understood. This is... She paused, searching for words. This is remarkable. Jake beamed with pride. Thanks. Cooking is kind of a hobby of mine. I figured if we were going to be stuck here for a while, we might as well eat well. A hobby, ZYX repeated faintly. Sure. Most humans enjoy cooking. It's relaxing, creative, and practical. Plus, good food makes everything better, you know? Around the fire, ZYX rescue team was staring at the human with expressions ranging from awe to disbelief. In 4 days, this supposedly weak and fragile being had not only survived in conditions that should have killed him but had transformed a desperate survival situation into what appeared to be a pleasant outdoor adventure. So, Jake said, settling down beside the fire with his own bowl, when can we expect the ride home? And, do you guys want to try some of the dessert I've been working on? I managed to figure out how to make something that's basically alien fruit cobbler. The rescue shuttle remained grounded for 3 hours while Captain ZYX tried to understand exactly what had happened on the planet's surface. What she discovered challenged everything she thought she knew about human capabilities. As darkness fell, Jake insisted that the rescue team stay overnight rather than attempting a night departure. The local predators are more active after dark, he explained, as if discussing the weather. Plus, you really should try the dessert I've been working on. ZYX found herself agreeing, partly out of scientific curiosity and partly because she was beginning to suspect that the human might actually know more about surviving on this hostile world than her own trained survival experts. Around the expanded campfire, Jake served what he called wilderness cobbler made from native fruits, improvised flour, and a sweet syrup extracted from tree bark. The combination should have been inedible, a random mixture of alien plant matter prepared by someone with no knowledge of galactic cuisine standards. Instead, it was delicious. Jake, she said carefully, what exactly is your background? You said you're a xenobiologist? That's right, Jake replied, settling back against a cushion he'd somehow crafted from snarlthon hide and native fiber stuffing. I specialize in ecosystem adaptation and species interaction. I was heading to the Rigel system to study some unusual evolutionary patterns when our transport got caught in that ion storm. And your training includes survival skills? Jake laughed. Not formally, no. But you pick things up, you know? I've spent time in a lot of different environments studying how life adapts. Plus, humans are pretty good at improvising.
Threndell, who had been quietly scanning the human throughout the evening, spoke up. Jake, your stress hormone levels are completely normal. In fact, they're lower than baseline for your species.
How is that possible?
You've been in a life-threatening situation for 4 days.
Has it been life-threatening?
Jake asked, looking genuinely puzzled. I mean, yeah, the crash was scary, and that first Snarlfawn was definitely a problem.
But, once we got settled in... He gestured around the camp. This has actually been kind of fun. When's the last time any of us got to just live in the wilderness for a few days?
No deadlines, no appointments, no subspace communications. Just figuring out how to live with what nature provides. The rescue team exchanged glances.
The human was describing a survival emergency as a recreational activity. Fun? ZYX repeated.
Sure. Look, I know it probably seems weird to you guys, but humans actually enjoy challenges like this.
We call it camping.
People pay money to go out into wilderness areas and live without modern conveniences just for the experience.
Siska, the Cree SHT scout, nodded enthusiastically. It has been educational. Jake taught me new hunting techniques that I had never considered.
His approach to tracking is completely different from our traditional methods, but remarkably effective. What kind of hunting techniques? Asked Vel Nas, the shuttle pilot, who had been listening intently to the conversation.
Jake's eyes lit up. Well, most species hunt by relying on their natural advantages, right? Siska's people use their speed and agility to run down prey. Cree SHT hunting is all about the chase and the quick kill. But humans evolved as persistence hunters. Persistence hunters?
Threndell leaned forward with interest.
We're not the fastest, strongest, or most agile predators, Jake explained.
But we're incredibly good at not giving up.
Humans can track prey for days, weeks if necessary.
We can keep going when other predators get tired or give up.
We're also really good at adapting our tactics when something isn't working.
He pointed to the defensive positions around the camp. Those Snarlfangs are bigger and stronger than me, with better natural weapons. In a straight fight, I'd lose every time.
But humans don't fight fair.
We use tools, we set traps, we change the conditions of the engagement until they favor us instead of our opponent. The traps you constructed, Vex NN said thoughtfully, they demonstrate tactical thinking that goes beyond simple survival. You weren't just trying to kill the Snarlfangs, you were trying to do it efficiently, with minimal risk and maximum resource recovery.
Exactly. Jake's enthusiasm was infectious. No point in wasting good meat, and Snarlfang hide is incredibly useful.
Plus, I needed to make sure the kills were clean so the meat wouldn't spoil, and I had to do it in a way that wouldn't attract other predators or damage the parts one needed for other projects.
ZYX stared at him. You hunted 2 apex predators while simultaneously planning how to use their remains for craft projects? Well, yeah. Waste not, want not, right? Jake gestured to various items around the camp. See that water container? Snarlfang bladder, thoroughly cleaned and sterilized. Those cushions? Hide and stuffing made from processed plant fibers. That rope? Twisted sinew and plant fiber. Those knives?
He indicated several sharp implements. Shaped and sharpened Snarlfang claws and teeth.
The rescue team looked around the camp with new eyes.
What they had assumed was a simple survival shelter was actually a complex living space crafted entirely from materials the human had gathered or created from scratch.
The engineering principles involved. Vexenen's voice was filled with admiration.
You've essentially built a complete life support system using nothing but local resources and salvaged crash materials.
It's not that impressive, Jake said with characteristic modesty. Humans have been doing stuff like this for thousands of years.
It's basically how our species survived before we developed technology. Thakmar spoke up, his deep voice rumbling in the darkness. Jake, on my homeworld, we have legends about the old builders, ancient beings who could survive anywhere, create anything, adapt to any challenge.
We thought they were myths. Not myths, Jake said quietly. Just humans. We're really good at making do with what we have.
The conversation was interrupted by a series of howls in the distance. Every member of the rescue team tensed, hands moving instinctively toward weapons. Jake simply cocked his head to listen. Night howlers, he said calmly.
Pack hunters, about 2 kilometers south. They won't come near the camp. How can you be certain? ZYXthera asked, her own hand resting on her sidearm.
The smell, Jake explained.
I've been burning Snarlfawn dung in the fire all evening.
To pack hunters like night howlers, that scent means there's a bigger predator in the area. They'll give us a wide berth. Threndal's scanner was beeping rapidly as he examined the fire.
You've been deliberately managing the chemical signature of your camp to deter predators?
Sure.
It's a pretty standard wilderness survival technique. You want to avoid fights whenever possible, so you make sure potential threats know you're not easy prey.
The Snarlfine scent also helps mask our own scent signatures, so we're harder to track.
Standard technique? Vel-Nas asked weakly. On Earth, yeah. Most human children learn basic wilderness safety.
Don't leave food where it can attract dangerous animals, use fire and scent to manage your territory, understand local predator behavior, know which plants and animals are safe to interact with.
Basic stuff.
ZYXthera felt her worldview shifting. What the human was describing as basic stuff represented sophisticated environmental management techniques that would challenge trained military specialists.
Jake, she said carefully, what would you have done if we hadn't arrived?
Jake shrugged.
Built a more permanent shelter, I guess. Set up better food preservation systems, maybe try to establish communication with the outside galaxy. This planet actually has some interesting resources.
With a little bit of development, it could be quite comfortable.
You were planning to colonize this world? She asked in disbelief.
Not colonize exactly, but, well, if we were stuck here long term, we might as well make the best of it. The ecosystem is actually pretty stable once you understand it, and there's plenty of room for expansion. Plus, the mineral resources are impressive. Thakmar was telling me about the rare elements his cargo was carrying. Turns out this planet has natural deposits of some of those same materials.
Thakmar nodded enthusiastically.
Jake found 3 separate mining sites within walking distance of the crash. He says with human mining techniques, extraction would be efficient and environmentally sustainable.
You've been planning mining operations? ZYXthera's voice climbed an octave. Just theoretical stuff, Jake said quickly.
But, yeah, if we were going to be here for the long haul, we'd need to think about infrastructure development.
Can't live in a survival camp forever.
The casual way the human discussed long-term planetary development as a backup plan to survival left the entire rescue team speechless.
Humans, VexNN said slowly, do not think like other species. What do you mean? Jake asked.
Most beings, when faced with a survival situation, focus entirely on immediate needs.
Food, shelter, safety. Their thinking becomes narrow, focused on each moment.
You appear to have been simultaneously managing immediate survival while planning for long-term civilization development.
Jake considered this. I guess that's true.
I mean, you have to handle the immediate problems first, but you also need to think ahead.
What if rescue doesn't come? What if it takes weeks or months? What if we decide we actually like it here? Better to have plans for different possibilities. You would consider staying here voluntarily? Siska asked. Maybe. I mean, it's a pretty interesting world.
The ecosystem dynamics are fascinating, there are plenty of resources, and the climate is actually quite pleasant once you adapt to it. Plus, we've already done the hard work of establishing a base camp and understanding the local dangers.
Jake gestured to his 3 companions. Thakmar knows interstellar trade routes and has connections throughout the galaxy. Siska's scouting skills would be perfect for territorial expansion and resource location. VexNN's analytical abilities could help us understand and optimize local systems.
And I know how to work with planetary ecosystems.
He paused, then grinned. We'd make a pretty good colonial team, actually. The three survivors looked at each other, and ZYX was surprised to see them actually considering the idea. The freedom would be appealing, Fakmar admitted. No trade regulations, no bureaucratic oversight. Just building something new. The environmental challenges would be stimulating, Siska agreed. And Jake's approach to ecosystem management is unlike anything I have encountered. The research possibilities are intriguing, Vexen added. A chance to study planetary development from the ground up, with human methodologies as the foundation. ZYX stared at them. In the space of 4 days, the human had not only kept 3 galactic citizens alive but had apparently convinced them to consider abandoning their lives in civilization to start a colony on a hostile world. This is... She started, then stopped. She had no words for what this was. Anyway, Jake said, apparently unaware of the profound effect his casual conversation was having on his audience, we should probably get some sleep. Tomorrow I want to show you guys the fruit groves I found yesterday. The trees produce something that tastes remarkably like chocolate when you process it right. I think you'd enjoy it. As the group settled down for the night around the carefully managed fire, ZYX lay awake staring at the alien stars. Everything she had been taught about human limitations was wrong. The supposedly weak and fragile species had revealed capabilities that defied galactic understanding. But, perhaps more disturbing was the growing realization that Jake Morrison wasn't exceptional among his kind. He had repeatedly referred to his skills and knowledge as standard for humans, as things that most people knew how to do. If that was true, then, the galactic community had severely underestimated humanity. And if humans could transform a survival emergency into a comfortable camping trip while casually planning planetary colonization, what else might they be capable of? Tomorrow, she would have to file a report about this incident. But ZYX was beginning to suspect that her report would sound so unbelievable that her superiors would assume she had suffered some kind of psychological breakdown. In the distance, the night howlers howled again, but the sound seemed farther away now. Even the apex predators were learning to give the humans' territory a wide berth. Dawn came early on the hostile world, bringing with it revelations that would shake Captain ZYX understanding of humanity to its core. She awoke to the smell of cooking food and the sound of Jake Morrison humming quietly as he prepared breakfast over the fire. Morning, he called cheerfully when he noticed her stirring. Hope you slept well. I've got fresh bread baking in the ground oven, and the fruit juice should be ready in a few minutes. ZYX sat up, her joints protesting after a night on the improvised bedding. Around her, the rest of the rescue team was slowly awakening, drawn by the enticing aromas coming from Jake's cooking area. Ground oven, she asked, trying to shake off the lingering effects of sleep. Sure. Dug a pit, lined it with flat stones from the crash site, built a fire in it to heat the stones, then buried the bread dough in ceramic pots to bake slowly overnight. It's an old technique, works great when you don't have modern cooking equipment. Jake gestured to what appeared to be several smooth, rounded objects near the fire. As ZYX watched, he carefully cracked one open to reveal a perfectly baked loaf of bread that smelled absolutely divine. How did you make bread? Threndal asked, his medical curiosity overriding his usual professional composure. Bread requires specific ingredients, flour, yeast, proper ratios of moisture and nutrients. Ground up those root vegetables I showed you yesterday for flour, Jake explained, slicing the bread with a knife he'd crafted from Snarlfong claw. Mixed it with tree sap for sweetness and binding, added some crushed seeds for texture. For yeast, I used wild fermentation, caught natural airborne yeasts in a flour and water mixture and let them multiply. He handed out slices of the warm bread, which proved to be delicious despite being made entirely from alien plants using Stone Age techniques. The fermentation process took 2 days to get active cultures, Jake continued, but once you have a good starter, you can keep it going indefinitely. Just feed it regularly and maintain the right temperature. Velnas, the shuttle pilot, stared at his slice of bread as if it were a miraculous artifact. You created a self-sustaining fermentation culture from nothing but alien plants and wild microorganisms? Sure. Humans have been doing that for thousands of years. Every planet with suitable plant life can support bread making if you understand the basic principles. You just have to experiment until you find the local equivalents of what you need. ZYX took a bite of the bread and felt her eyes widen. It was genuinely excellent, complex flavor, perfect texture, and somehow exactly suited to her own taste preferences despite being made from completely unknown ingredients. "This is better than most commercial bread in the galactic market," she said without thinking. Jake beamed with pride. "Thanks. I was worried about getting the ratios right. Alien biochemistry can be tricky when you're trying to replicate Earth techniques." As they ate breakfast, which also included fresh fruit, some kind of protein that tasted like eggs but came from a plant Jake had discovered, and the fruit juice that somehow managed to be both refreshing and energizing, ZYX found herself studying the human more carefully. Jake Morrison didn't look like someone who should be capable of what he was accomplishing. He was of average height and build for his species, with no obvious physical enhancements or special equipment. His clothing was practical but unremarkable. Yet somehow, in 4 days, he had mastered an alien ecosystem and created a level of comfort that exceeded many permanent settlements. "Jake," she said carefully, "yesterday you mentioned that your skills were standard for humans. Can you elaborate on that?" "What do you mean?" he asked, refilling her cup with the fruit juice. "The survival techniques, the engineering, the food preparation, the ecosystem management, you've described all of these as basic human knowledge. Is that accurate?" Jake paused, considering the question. "Well, not everyone knows everything, obviously. But most humans learn basic survival skills as children. Camping, hiking, fishing, hunting, foraging, that's pretty standard recreational stuff. And cooking is something almost every human does to some degree." "Recreational survival training," ZYX repeated slowly. "Sure. We call it outdoor recreation. People spend their free time practicing survival skills because it's fun and relaxing. Lots of humans prefer spending vacations in wilderness areas rather than cities." Threndow leaned forward. "Are you saying that humans deliberately seek out dangerous, primitive conditions for entertainment?" "I wouldn't call it dangerous," Jake protested. "I mean, you take reasonable precautions. But, yeah, getting away from technology and living simply for a while is really popular. Some people do it for spiritual reasons, some for physical fitness, some just because they enjoy the challenge." "The challenge," Siska murmured. "You view survival difficulties as a form of recreation." "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds kind of weird," Jake admitted. "But think about it, humans evolved to live in natural environments. Spending time in the wilderness, using our hands to make things, figuring out how to work with natural systems instead of against them, it feels good. It's what we're designed for." Vex NN had been quietly analyzing data on his portable computer throughout breakfast. Now he looked up with an expression of deep thoughtfulness. "Jake, I have been studying the efficiency metrics of your camp operations," he said. "Your resource utilization ratios exceed theoretical optimization models. You are generating surplus production in multiple categories while maintaining perfect sustainability indexes." "Meaning?" ZYX asked. "Meaning he's not just surviving, he's thriving. Food production is exceeding consumption by significant margins. Material processing is generating more resources than are being depleted. Energy management is running at 127% efficiency compared to baseline requirements." Vexenen's digits danced across his computer interface. "According to my calculations, this camp could support 12 individuals indefinitely, or current population levels with steadily improving living standards." "That's the goal," Jake said matter-of-factly. "Survival situations should always move toward sustainability and growth. If you're just barely hanging on, you're one accident away from disaster. Much better to build up reserves and improve your systems." "You plan for population expansion?" ZYX asked faintly. "Of course. What if we found other survivors? What if someone got injured and needed extra resources for recovery? What if we decided to start families?" Jake shrugged. "Always better to be prepared for different possibilities.
The casual mention of starting families in a wilderness survival situation left the rescue team speechless.
The human was thinking in terms of multi-generational planetary settlement. Jake, Thakmar said slowly, show them the workshop. Jake's face lit up. Oh, right.
You guys will probably find this interesting.
I've been working on some projects that might be useful for future development.
He led them to an area behind the main shelter that ZYX had initially dismissed as a pile of salvage. Looking more carefully, she realized it was actually an organized manufacturing facility constructed entirely from crash debris and natural materials.
Basic metalworking setup, Jake explained, pointing to an improvised forge.
I can shape and sharpen tools, repair equipment, even do some alloy work with the right materials.
That's a pottery kiln for making ceramic containers and cookware.
Over there is a textile production area. I've been experimenting with plant fiber processing to make cloth and rope. He gestured to various work areas, each equipped with tools that appeared to be handmade but surprisingly sophisticated. This is leather working for hide processing, that's wood carving for furniture and construction materials, and over there is what I guess you'd call a chemistry lab.
Chemistry lab?
Threndal asked, his voice barely above a whisper.
Basic stuff, Jake said modestly. Soap making, metal purification, dye extraction, pharmaceutical testing.
Nothing too complex, but useful for improving quality of life and managing health issues. ZYX stared at the chemistry setup, which included glass containers crafted from melted sand, precision measuring tools carved from bone, and what appeared to be a functional distillation apparatus.
You made soap? She asked.
Sure. Good hygiene is essential for long-term health, especially in a wilderness environment. The soap is made from animal fats and plant ash produces a good lye solution that's effective for cleaning without being too harsh on skin. He pointed to several bars of what indeed appeared to be high-quality soap.
I've also been working on shampoo, toothpaste, and some basic medicines. Prevention is better than treatment when you don't have access to advanced medical facilities. Vel-Nas picked up one of the soap bars and sniffed it cautiously. This smells pleasant.
Added some local herbs for fragrance and antiseptic properties, Jake explained. No point in making soap that works but smells terrible.
Quality of life matters. Jake, Vex-NN said carefully, you have essentially constructed a complete pre-industrial civilization in 4 days. Well, the basics anyway, Jake agreed.
There's still a lot of work to do if we were going to expand significantly. We'd need better mining operations for metal extraction, more sophisticated agricultural systems, maybe some hydroelectric power if we could dam that stream over there.
He pointed to a waterway about half a kilometer away. I did some preliminary surveys yesterday.
The topology would support a small dam, which would give us mechanical power for more advanced manufacturing. Plus, controlled water flow would support expanded agriculture and aquaculture projects.
Aquaculture projects? ZYX asked weakly. Fish farming, basically. That stream has some interesting local species that look like they could be domesticated. Good protein source, and fish farming is usually more efficient than hunting for meeting long-term food needs.
The human was casually discussing terraforming and agricultural development as natural extensions of his survival planning.
Jake, she said slowly, what exactly do you think you're doing here? Jake looked puzzled by the question. Setting up a sustainable lifestyle?
I mean, we don't know how long we'll be here, and even if rescue comes soon, this could be a useful base for future operations.
Why let all this work go to waste? Future operations? Sure. Thakmar was telling me about the trade potential for this system. Lots of rare resources, good strategic location, minimal political complications.
If we established a permanent base here, it could serve as a hub for exploration and development in this sector.
He gestured toward the horizons. Plus, this planet is actually quite beautiful once you get used to it.
Climate is good, plenty of room for expansion, interesting local ecosystem.
It would be a nice place to live. Siska nodded enthusiastically.
Jake has shown me 17 different plant species that could be developed for large-scale agriculture.
The local growing seasons would support year-round cultivation with proper management. The mineral wealth is substantial, Thakmar added. With human mining techniques and Voltan engineering capabilities, resource extraction would be highly profitable. The research possibilities are limitless, Vexen chimed in.
Studying planetary development with human methodologies could produce significant advances in xenobiology, ecosystem management, and sustainable technology.
ZYX realized that she was witnessing the birth of a colony.
In 4 days, one human had not only survived on a hostile world but had inspired 3 galactic citizens to consider abandoning their existing lives to build something new together.
This is unprecedented, she said, more to herself than to the others. Is it? Jake asked.
I mean, humans have been doing this kind of thing for a long time. Exploring new places, figuring out how to live there, building communities. It's pretty much how we spread across Earth originally, and it's what we're doing as we move out into the galaxy. He paused, then added thoughtfully, maybe it seems unusual because most galactic species stick to worlds that are already suitable for them.
But humans kind of specialize in making unsuitable places suitable. It's what we're good at. The simple way he stated this, as if environmental adaptation and planetary development were just normal human activities, sent chills down ZYX's spine. If humans could casually transform hostile worlds into comfortable homes while treating the process as a recreational activity, what would they be capable of when they really tried?
The departure from what Jake Morrison had started calling New Haven Base took place 3 days later than originally planned. Captain ZYX had intended to evacuate the survivors immediately, but found herself caught up in documenting what was rapidly becoming the most significant xenobiological discovery in galactic history. Her daily reports to Galactic Command had grown increasingly frantic as she tried to explain what she was witnessing.
The responses from her superiors suggested they thought she was suffering from some form of psychological breakdown.
"Captain," her communications officer had said during the morning briefing, "Command is requesting that you submit to medical evaluation upon your return. They're concerned about the unusual nature of your recent reports."
ZYX understood their skepticism.
Her descriptions of human capabilities sounded like science fiction. But the evidence was all around her.
In the week since the rescue team's arrival, Jake had continued expanding and improving the camp with an efficiency that defied explanation.
The workshop now included a functional printing press made from salvaged metal and processed plant fibers. The chemistry lab had produced not only soap and basic medicines but also high-quality dyes, metal alloys, and what appeared to be explosives for mining operations. Most disturbing of all, Jake had begun teaching his techniques to the other species.
"The key is understanding that every environment provides everything you need," Jake explained to Velenis, who was struggling to master basic fire-starting techniques. "You just have to know how to see the possibilities."
Under Jake's patient instruction, the Altarian pilot had learned to identify edible plants, construct simple tools, and even prepare basic meals. Similar transformations were occurring throughout the rescue team as Jake cheerfully shared his knowledge with anyone interested in learning. This teaching behavior, Threndal observed privately to ZYX, it's consistent across all interactions.
The human seems compelled to share survival knowledge. Is that significant? ZYX asked.
Most species guard survival advantages carefully. Knowledge that could mean the difference between life and death is typically protected, shared only within family units or tribal structures. But Jake shares freely with anyone, even potential competitors.
ZYX had noticed this as well.
Jake seemed genuinely delighted when others learned his techniques, celebrating their successes as enthusiastically as his own achievements.
"Maybe it's because humans don't see others as competitors," she mused.
"Jake keeps talking about cooperation and community building."
"Exactly," Threndal said. "He appears to view all sentient beings as potential collaborators rather than threats."
It suggests a fundamental difference in how humans approach survival situations.
This difference was becoming more apparent as the week progressed.
While other species focused on individual survival, Jake was building systems that would benefit everyone. His innovations weren't just about keeping himself alive, they were about creating abundance that could be shared. "Check this out," Jake said excitedly, leading ZYX to his latest project.
I've been working on communication systems.
He showed her a collection of mirrors, flags, and what appeared to be a primitive radio transmitter constructed from salvaged electronics and natural crystals. Mirror signals for short-range communication, flag semaphore for medium range, and I think I can get this radio working for long-distance contact. The crystals from those mineral deposits have some interesting resonance properties. You're building a communications network? She asked.
Well, we'll need it if this place grows into a real settlement. Can't run a colony without good communications. Plus, it would be nice to stay in touch with the outside galaxy.
Jake's casual assumption that the crash site would develop into a permanent settlement was shared by his 3 original companions, who had become increasingly enthusiastic about the colonization project.
We've been discussing the legal aspects, Thakmar informed her. This world is unclaimed under galactic law.
If we file the proper development papers, we could establish legitimate territorial rights.
You're actually serious about this, ZYX said, though she was no longer surprised. Why not? Siska asked.
Jake has proven that the planet is not only habitable but comfortable.
The resource potential is enormous, and the location is strategically valuable for trade routes. Plus, VexNN added, the research opportunities are unprecedented. Studying human development techniques could revolutionize galactic approaches to planetary colonization. Jake nodded enthusiastically.
And we've already done the hard work of establishing basic infrastructure. It would be a shame to waste all that effort.
ZYX studied the 3 aliens who had become converts to Jake's vision of frontier life. They were all accomplished individuals with successful careers in galactic society.
Yet here they were, seriously considering abandoning everything to build a new civilization around the ideas of one human.
What makes you so confident this would work? She asked.
Watch him, Thakmar said simply, gesturing toward Jake, who was currently teaching 2 of her crew members how to weave baskets from local plant material. In 1 week, he has transformed the survival emergency into a thriving community. He has taken the worst-case scenario and made it better than normal life. His solutions improve everything they touch, Siska agreed.
The food tastes better, the shelter is more comfortable, the work is more efficient.
Even the social dynamics are better, everyone is happier and more cooperative when they follow his approaches.
It's not just survival, VexNN added thoughtfully.
Jake's methodologies create positive feedback loops.
Each improvement makes the next improvement easier. Each success builds toward bigger successes. He's not just solving problems, he's building momentum toward genuine prosperity. ZYX had to admit they were right.
The camp had evolved from a crash site to a comfortable living space to something that was beginning to resemble a small town. Jake's innovations weren't just keeping people alive, they were creating a lifestyle that was actually attractive. Jake, she said, approaching the human, who had just finished giving an impromptu lecture on water purification techniques.
Can I ask you something?
Sure. He wiped his hands on a towel that appeared to be woven from processed plant fiber and turned to give her his full attention.
Why are you doing all this?
I mean, you could have just waited for rescue.
Built a simple shelter, rationed the emergency supplies, kept everyone alive until we arrived.
Instead, you've built all of this.
She gestured to the expanding settlement around them. Jake considered the question seriously. I guess because just surviving isn't really living, he said finally.
I mean, sure, you can huddle in a cave and eat roots and hope someone comes to save you.
But why do that when you could build something better?
He paused, looking around at the bustling activity of the camp.
Besides, we didn't know if rescue would come. And, even if it did, we knew we were all going to be here together for at least a few days. Why not make those days as good as possible?
But, this goes way beyond making a few days comfortable, ZYX pointed out. You've built infrastructure for long-term civilization.
Sure, but that's how you make things better, Jake explained patiently. You don't just solve today's problems. You solve tomorrow's problems too.
And next week's problems.
And next year's problems.
Each solution makes the next one easier,
So pretty soon you're not just surviving, you're thriving. He gestured toward a group of her crew members who were working together on some kind of construction project under the guidance of Thakmar. Look at them. Yesterday they were worried about basic survival. Today they're building furniture and planning agricultural projects. Tomorrow they'll be designing better tools and more efficient systems. Each day gets easier and more interesting than the last. And you think this approach would work on any world? She asked. Any world with basic resources, sure. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. Take a harsh environment, figure out how to not just survive but thrive, build something better than what you had before. It's what we do. The simple confidence in his voice sent familiar chills down ZYX's spine. Jake wasn't boasting or exaggerating. He was stating what he clearly considered to be obvious facts about human nature. Jake, she said carefully, what do you think would happen if more humans learned about this place? Jake's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Oh, that would be amazing. I mean, we could really use some specialists, engineers, doctors, teachers, artists. And more hands would mean we could tackle bigger projects. Infrastructure development, advanced manufacturing, maybe even some terraforming work to expand the habitable zones. He paused, then added thoughtfully, plus, it would be nice to have more people to share all this with. I mean, we've built something pretty special here. It seems selfish to keep it to ourselves. The casual way he discussed attracting human colonists to a world that the rest of the galaxy considered barely habitable was perhaps the most terrifying thing ZYXthera had heard yet. You would want to bring in more humans? She asked. Sure. Why not? There are plenty of humans who would love a chance to build something new. Pioneer types, explorers, people who are tired of crowded cities and complicated bureaucracies. This place would appeal to them. Jake gestured toward the thriving settlement around them. Look what we've accomplished with just 4 people and some basic tools. Imagine what we could do with 100 people, or 1,000. As if summoned by his words, Thakmar approached with what appeared to be architectural plans drawn on bark paper. Jake, I've been working on designs for expanded housing. If we're going to invite more settlers, we'll need proper residential areas. Excellent. Jake studied the plans enthusiastically. Oh, this is clever, using the natural cave systems for temperature control. And I love the communal kitchen design. Much more efficient than individual cooking facilities. ZYXthera stared at the plans, which detailed a settlement designed to support several hundred inhabitants with sophisticated infrastructure including water management, waste processing, manufacturing facilities, and recreational areas. You're planning a city, she said weakly. Well, a town anyway, Thakmar corrected. Cities come later, after you've established solid economic foundations and transportation networks. Transportation networks? Sure, Jake said cheerfully. We'll need landing facilities for cargo ships, roads connecting different resource areas, maybe some kind of rail system if the settlement grows large enough. Plus communication networks linking us to other colonies and trading posts. The human was casually discussing planetary development as if it were a simple construction project. Jake, ZYXthera said, her voice barely above a whisper, what do you think you're doing? Jake looked surprised by the question. Building a better future, I guess. Isn't that what everyone wants? The simple sincerity of his answer left her speechless. Jake Morrison genuinely believed that transforming hostile worlds into thriving civilizations was not only possible but normal. He thought that creating abundance from scarcity was just what people did when they put their minds to it. And, perhaps most disturbing of all, his confidence was infectious. Everyone around him was beginning to believe it too. As ZYXthera finally prepared to depart with her rescue team -3 members who had requested permission to stay and help establish the colony, she realized that she was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history. Humans didn't just survive. They transformed. And they did it so naturally, so enthusiastically, and so effectively that they made it look like the most obvious thing in the galaxy. The question that haunted her as the shuttle lifted off from New Haven base was simple: if one untrained human could accidentally start a civilization in a week, what would happen when humanity began trying to build things on purpose?
Looking down at the growing settlement from the shuttle's viewport, ZYX Thera suspected the galaxy was about to find out.